Network.
Peace out. Just testing.
Sure.
I'll do an intro. I'm gonna talk a little bit about Green Seed, and then I'll introduce you. Yeah.
All right.
Hello. Another installment of the Valhalla Movement podcast, and this week is pretty special because I have somebody who's dear and near to my heart. Being a guest on the podcast, we've worked together on so many different avenues. We've been to Higher Purpose Project together. If you guys haven't heard about that, Higher Purpose or thehigherpurpose.com or thehigherpurposeproject.com. Ginger Kern. But before I introduce her, before I get into saying hello and welcoming her, I do want to mention greenseed.me. That is one word, greenseed.me. So a lot of you guys are listening to this podcast, you're hearing about Green Seed, and you're like, what the hell is Green Seed? What the hell? What is going on? Well, basically, Valhalla has been working on a public platform, very much like Kickstarter, but is really actually a crowdsourcing platform dedicated to social causes and sustainable initiatives. So what does that mean? That means that if you have a project that you want to do in Africa to build a well water or in a town in Africa, or you want to build a solar shed or an earthship here in Canada or in America, well, we can help get your project online in the exact same way that you would Kickstarter, but not only fund your project, find people to crowdfund your project in a project-based way or in a subscription-based way, aka monthly, almost like Greenpeace or some of these charities would operate, but also allow people to donate their social reach and their time and energy into becoming a volunteer or a team member, or just donating their Facebook reach out to your cause. So it eliminates a little bit of the money aspect of it, because projects need more than just money to come to life, and they really need community. And as you guys know, Valhalla is all about sustainability, it's all about social causes, it's all about community, it's all about spreading of knowledge, and it's all about taking action. And so this is the platform that enables not only us to do it, but now is going to enable you to do it. So this platform, if you're listening to this, is not live yet. We're coding it, we're putting it together, but you can sign up to know when it's going to launch, to be a part of the beta phase. If you go to greenseed.me, enter your email. Trust me, I'm telling you, it's going to be revolutionary. We're really bringing in some incredible projects that are going to blow your minds when it first launches. And again, this is something that you could use. So it will tickle that selfish kind of nodes in your body too. That being said, without further ado, Ginger Kern is like I said, a friend of mine. We've been working together. I've been helping her on marketing stuff. She's been helping me on a variety of things, as well as getting me my foot in the door in some of these events, and actually really helping me set up Valhalla, Colorado, which is a kind of group that's been springing up in the Valhalla movement. She runs something called the Traveler's Mindset. So if you want to poke around, travelersmindset.us or .us, I guess, or US. Travelers with one L, so I think it's the English spelling, right?
The American spelling,
the American spelling, yeah. So yeah. I always confuse it too. But great website. I mean, I'll let her explain what it is, what's going on. But thank you so much, Ginger, for being a part of this podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Mark. I'm super excited. I know we've done a lot of talking behind the scenes. Like, you've helped me out immensely with the website, with the platform. So it's just really exciting to be here. And I love Valhalla. Like, what? You guys are just doing awesome stuff. It's been a while since I was there, but
it's true. It's true. Yeah, Ginger came down when we were in our first house. This is a while ago. I don't even know what time of year or whatever it was. It was in our first season, though. It was our first kind of summer, I guess. That you came down, you met most of the crew, if not all of the crew, and since then we've just kind of stayed in contact, and we've been kind of like bouncing back and forth ideas, working with one another in small ways and in bigger ways, and this relationship is definitely not over. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of each other in the next little bit. We're going to be, probably around this time this podcast is released, we're going to be going to the Higher Purpose Project in Boston together. I'm assuming you're there, right? I'm sure.
I actually won't be there in Boston. I know. It's like mind blowing. This is update for you as well.
Yeah.
So Higher Purpose, it's happening on 2 weekends, and one of those weekends is during Burning Man, and then right after Burning Man, a best friend of mine from childhood is coming out to Colorado to visit, and so oh man, I feel so bad, but I can't go. But for everyone who's going, I mean, the family will be there. It's going to be awesome.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll be there. I had such a blast. At the last one in Colorado. It was unreal, and it seemed like there was a lot of clarity and a lot of greatness that came out of it, not only for me, but even for you. You know, in my case, I ended up doing one of my first ever speeches on a topic that I've been developing slowly but surely, and I've kind of launched my own speaking career almost, right? Like going around talking about these topics, and I launched officially at the Higher Purpose Project something called the Superhero Academy. So you guys have been hearing about it. The name of the podcast is called Superhero Academy. You're like wondering what's going on. Well, part of that is really me personally transitioning from being the person who was on the ground, always doing the marketing, always doing the actions and putting these things together, and now shifting into kind of like the consultant role, and as well as the public consultant role. So not only a private consultant that a company can hire to you know, say, hey, what can I do for my crowdfunding campaign, or what can I do for my website, or what should I do to start a movement, but also doing it in public settings and going out on a stage and trying to inspire people, because I personally feel my personal goal has always been to empower others. I've kind of realized this as I do anything, is that I've always been engaged in empowering others, and I know that through some of these talks that you also had clarity, and this is kind of where the traveler's mindset just kind of honed in, right? I mean, so how about you explain that experience a little bit, and then explain to us and to everyone listening what that is. What is traveler's mindset?
Definitely. So I would start with the why behind it, because as I learned from the best, this is kind of your philosophy in life, starting with why. And my why is connecting with the humanity in every single person. So regardless of what country they're from, regardless of whether or not we have a language in common, whatever superficial differences there might be, I don't care. I'm going to connect with something in you because you're a fellow human being. It's just what's going to happen. I'll find a way, believe me. So the traveler's mindset. Yeah.
I don't think you could spend more than 5 minutes with Ginger and not smile. But anyway, I digress.
But basically, so the traveler's mindset is built upon that principle. And, you know, it came from an idea that developed when I was coming back to the States after having lived in Germany for 3 years and having traveled a ton during those times, during those years, to like 25 different countries. And so you start noticing a lot of similarities, regardless of whatever cultural differences there are. And I was curious to see how I could keep the mentality that I had on the road, like that openness, that, you know, willingness to connect and like help people out, or just like ask for help. Like that's a huge thing. We don't do that necessarily in our everyday lives, but I do it all the time, immediately when I don't know something, when I'm on the road. So I was like, exactly. So like through the travels, when I was coming back to the States, I'd made my decision to move back, and I was wondering, okay, well, I don't want to get stagnant. Like that is something that I hate, stagnation. And I wanted to basically like dissect a system to keep myself in the traveler's mindset, because it's been so useful for me on the road in terms of just connecting with people and having awesome relationships.
And your heart is so much more open. Like when you're on the road, it's just like your ability to talk to strangers, your willingness to like experience the smallest of little things is completely different than when you're at home. Like when you're at home, you'll drive by the same street every day and not notice that house was there, or that something that is fairly unique to your own area was actually there, and it just completely slips your mind. But
yeah, totally. Yeah. It's like that's part of it, is like routine, right? So this is jumping ahead a bit, but I guess one question that people ask me is, well, how do I maintain the traveler's mindset? And it's like doing something new, intentionally new, every day. No matter how big, no matter how small, you got to do the new stuff, because it keeps your brain always developing. It keeps we've talked about like neuropsychology and just how your brain functions. And if you're building new neural pathways all the time, which is what learning a new language does, for example, or for instance, if you're in India and your senses are totally ablaze, totally open, totally alight, and they're absorbing, like that's because there's so much new stimuli. And so when you get back, you have to actively seek out that new stimuli so that you can keep growing, keep building new connections. And that's really the key. So routine is like that routine causes stagnation. So you have to switch something up.
Yeah, no, and I fully agree with that. I mean, I love, first of all, I love traveling. After I kind of sold my first business, I ended up going on like a 3.5 month, almost 4 month escapade, kind of
Nice.
around the world. I went to Australia, I went to China, I went to Europe. I've been since back to Europe. I've been to Argentina and Brazil.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Mexico. I've been to a lot of places, and I've been traveling more and more and more, and I actually love it. There is nothing like being out of your environment to, number one, appreciate your environment, right? It's like being away from home makes me miss home or appreciate what I actually have at home and appreciate like the balance and the stability that is kind of what home generally represents for people, and at least for me. And the other thing is that I'm in this exploratory, like I'm trying completely different foods, I'm meeting completely different people, I'm doing things that maybe I would never have done otherwise, and
risky stuff, adventurous stuff.
Yeah, and it's just like,
totally.
I don't know. There's something that there's this heightened sense of awesome that comes with traveling, and there's just, I don't know, it fills your soul up again. It kind of nourishes your body.
Yes.
It really kind of makes you feel alive again. It breaks that routine, as you said. And, for me, when I was traveling, I kind of started repeating this phrase: if you're not growing, you're dying. And this is something I've kind of brought back with me, which is,
nice.
And you were kind of alluding to that, right? You're growing, growing, growing. But I always kind of equate the not growing stage as like, I'm just dying. I'm just waiting. I'm just like getting a day closer to the day I'm going to die. And I'm not really doing anything to expand my consciousness, to open my doors further, to open my mind further to new possibilities, new ideas. Because, these things happen all the time, right? Like, how many times have you guys like tried a food that you used to hate as a kid, and now you're like, I absolutely love it. Like,
this is the best broccoli ever.
Absolutely. Like, I used to absolutely hate pickles and olives. Like, I just did not like them. I didn't like spinach either. Like, I hated it.
Oh,
I don't know why. Yeah.
Spinach is awesome.
It is. But I used to eat it. Like, my grandmother would make these spinach pies, or my father or whoever, and they would make these spinach pies, and they were kind of like they were drenched a little bit. And so I don't know, they were like kind of soggy and watery, and I never really, I don't know, like they left this weird taste in my mouth, and the texture was weird, and I hated it. And I hated pickles. They were too vinegary, and they were too, I don't know, it was too much.
You're very intentional. You're serious about these pickles.
I couldn't do with it. Now I'm literally obsessed with pickles. Because at some point, I tried them. At some point, I started taking them out of my burger, or I started leaving them in my burger, and I'd be like, oh, this is all right.
This actually does work. Right.
Yeah, and
so you show your ability to change as well. Like, boom.
That's the whole point. I mean, people think that we don't really change, or that change comes very tough. And it takes time. It does. Change is not overnight sometimes, or in many cases, but it does actually happen. And you'll never know until you actually try that pickle or eat that spinach again, or do whatever it is, because that's when you give it another shot. You have a different lens, a different, the shades of your life and the sunglasses that you wear, or the goggles that you're wearing.
They're always switching.
Are constantly changing. And you might have not liked something on one day.
You can pick them.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can pick your lens, right? So like, for instance, with travel, and this is something that a lot of people say, I don't have the time, I don't have the money, or whatever it is. And I argue or challenge everyone who says that. Number one, it's okay if you don't have the money. You can still have the traveler's mindset in your mind. That's the convenient part. It's with you wherever you go. You already have the skill. You just have to unlock it.
Yeah.
It's already there.
Absolutely.
So, exactly. And if you do get the chance to travel, or when you do, because I really, really, really encourage it, you don't have to go big. You don't have to like go to New Zealand or Australia or just like the other side of the world. You can just start where you are. You can start locally. For instance, you're in Montreal. If you'd never been to Toronto, why not go down to Toronto? It's not in Quebec, like France, so you're not going to hear French anymore. You're probably going to have more of a New York vibe. Totally different culture. Yeah. And it's not that far. So even if you're not leaving your country per se, you can still engage the traveler's mindset in whatever situation that you're moving in. So it's all about, again, going back to the idea, the why, connecting with the humanity in everyone. And that's like, and here's a trigger question for people. So something that I ask myself a lot is like, where are my borders? Like, where are the real borders? And that's something when I feel like resistance to connecting with someone or to having a conversation with someone or just even saying like, hey, on the street for no reason, like I ask myself, like, why? Like, what is that makes it a border between me and that person? And
I'm gonna write something down here.
yeah, like, where are your borders, Mark? I don't know, you know? And they change day by day, for sure. They also change situation to situation or country to country. For instance, how I acted in Germany, a little bit more standoffish, a little more distant. That's the normal culture compared to the United States or compared to Thailand, where I've also lived. But that's a choice as well, right? So I can choose in every situation to recognize that border and say, fuck that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. And it's because that border is truthfully in your mind.
Yeah.
Right? It's truthfully living within you. It's truthfully, you know, like anything that we resist in any way, okay, whether it be related to traveling or not, is within you, right?
Exactly.
Like at the end of the day, it's your mindset. Like if you were born today, you wouldn't have that exact preconceived notion that you currently have today as the young adult or whoever you are listening to this right now, right? You somehow gained that knowledge or that somehow shaped and formed based on media that you've consumed, based on other people's opinions that you've heard, based of your own experiences, based on a whole bunch of different assets. But you have the ability to kind of remold that every time. It's like Play-Doh, right? It's like your mind could just be like, and then you could just, and then just completely shift the shape of whatever it is that you thought was a kind of a solid idea, and it does
belief system, basically.
Yeah, and that belief system radically shifting will feel so enlightening and feel so like, wow, like it's so refreshing to kind of to change something that you used to always have like set in stone
as
almost
a default
in your mind.
mode.
Yeah, then it really changes everything else, because then you start wondering, not only that one changed, but you say, well, shit, if this one changed, what about the next one?
What else could? Exactly.
What else? And then no matter what anybody says, oh, I don't have enough money, or I'm only going to be successful when I do this, or I'm only going to be able to travel, but after I complete this, or after I
have to learn languages, or whatever.
Exactly.
No.
All of that is complete and utter bullshit. And in fact, like, so I'm fairly adventurous, and I seek that exact limit, right? Like, I'm like, that's where I'm scared to go, so that's where I'm going. Like, people ask me, like, why are you going to China? And I'm like, I have no good idea. No, I have no real idea why the hell I'm going. The only reason I'm going is because I want to be in an environment where I do not know how to speak the language. I will have almost zero ability to be able to communicate with people.
Yes.
And like, and it will be a challenge. So everyone's different. Like, I don't expect that everyone who's listening to this is to be like, wow, yeah, let me go to China right now. Or let me go to that toughest, craziest place that I don't want to go to. Or not that I don't want to go to, but that I really see as some kind of challenge. But you can take, exactly like you said, a smaller step. You can go to Toronto. Or in my case, I've never been to Niagara Falls. And everyone outside of Canada is like, oh yeah, Canada, maple syrup, nice people, Niagara Falls. And I'm like,
it's all true.
And exactly.
Very nice people.
Exactly. It's nothing but maple syrup, hockey,
and
nice people, and Niagara Falls. But I have personally never been to Niagara Falls, and I should go, and I want to go. And
well, they're still there. Lucky for
they
you.
are still there. They have not dried up just yet. And luckily, hopefully, I will go soon. But you just need to find the time to schedule it, because that's the next point that I find sometimes is hard for me, is that I get so caught up in all the things that I'm doing that I actually have a hard time personally scheduling fun. I have a hard time actually scheduling bigger, like, fun elements, like things, like not like scheduling fun in another way of like, okay, I leave this open and then I'll do whatever flows is one thing, but leaving a schedule open is not the exact same thing as scheduling, like, you know, next week I'm going to, listening to this, it's going to be in the past, I'm going to the this hot air balloon festival. And like,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Sounds awesome.
Absolutely. I've always wanted to go.
But you had to schedule it, right?
But for me, I had to schedule it, and
Yeah.
I think the other thing that happens to other people is they need to schedule it too. They need to schedule their vacations because they work a
Yeah.
9 to 5 or whatever.
Exactly.
So just schedule it. Why not
Just
write?
do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why not write like a list of 10 things down that you really want to do,
Yeah.
places you want to go, and then just like go. And you don't have to have a reason to
Perfect.
go. It's like, why the hell did you go to any other vacation destination? You just went because
It's
you
just
heard.
an experiment, right?
Exactly.
It's just exploration. That's
Exactly.
all you're doing. You're just putting yourself out there and seeing what happens. And I wanted to actually touch base on, or go back to what you had mentioned before about those challenging times.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to lie, like living abroad for 3 years was not all rainbows and butterflies. Like there were definite challenges. So
Of course.
whenever, I mean, in a 2-week trip, you're going to have challenges. So part of the traveler's mindset is choosing to view discomfort as fun. Like choosing to view the fact that you just missed the bus because you didn't speak the language, you couldn't ask the right time, or you didn't have your change. Well, now you just have all this free time, and like, what are you going to do with it? You have no idea what endless possibilities are going to cross your path. So you're like, you could get stressed out by it, or you could say, you know what? Well, I'm just going to go explore this way instead. Totally up to your choice. So.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, so when we were talking about your website and you were telling me this incredibly shocking statistic, which kind of alludes to people's choice of what they're doing and where they're traveling and what's going on. This statistic, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, surrounds Americans and the amount of Americans with passports, or the amount of Americans and number of Americans that have left the country and have not explored kind of beyond the borders of the USA, what other cultures are like. And, maybe that, I believe this has incredible ramifications, not only from a state of closed-mindedness, but also a state of closed-mindedness and a problem that I would turn back towards, like geopolitical problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like our mindset as to what is going on in the Middle East, or what is going on in China, or what's happening in Russia is partially, it is only coming from the fact, if we've never been there, from media and media intent. And that allows the media to basically control our perception and our borders that we've been talking about, and our box and our belief system about these places. And
disassociate us as people from the other people who live there, who actually are going through the experiences over there.
Exactly, which relates to your current your mission, which is finding the humanity in anyone, no matter what race, color, personality, whatever it is. These people are humans, and we can connect with them. And I have always found that people who don't travel, or people who travel even very little, seem to we forget that. It's almost like it's like a muscle that we don't work out for a while. Well, eventually it kind of gets weak, and it's not as strong as it should be or could be. And we have this closed-minded idea of like, oh, the Chinese are just pillaging our world, and they're just doing everything with cheap labor and blah, 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 and everything they make is cheap and blah. Like, if you go to China, these are just regular people trying to make a living. There's how freaking intense it might be to live in China with 1.5 billion people there, like all competing for that job that you want to. Like, whoa, like that's not easy. It's not an easy geopolitical thing to consider, or even we're this time Palestine and Gaza and the Gaza Strip and Israel and I don't know, Russia and Ukraine. Like all of these things are so hard to understand without kind of putting yourself in the other person's shoes and then making a decision. It's not to say that what Americans' idea of the right decision is, or what is going on, is untrue. It's just that it's not their own. And it would be best if they would be their own. So I would love for you to kind of reveal that reveal that shocking statistic, and then tell me how this kind of activated you. And like, what is the traveler's mindset? Like, what are you actually engaging people in, and what are you going to try and do with this?
Totally. Okay, so a couple of things. So the statistic of the percentage of Americans, I'm specifically talking about the United States of America, not North Americans, just to be clear, who have passports, who even have them, not necessarily use them, but have them, somewhere around like 20 or 30%. It's incredibly low. When you think of a country, I mean, how many millions people? There's like 350 million, something like that.
And some odd billion, yeah.
It's quite a lot of people. And if only 20 or 30% have passports, and we are apparently the world's superpower, I mean, I'm skeptical about that too. But anyway, that's what they call us in some circles.
Sure.
This is terrible, because how can you be a superpower and not have the perspective on the world that apparently you're very powerful over? It's I would think irresponsible, and it's not the ideal situation. I mean, how can you make the best decisions if you don't have the knowledge and if you don't have engaged citizens that are looking at the world, which is, I think, a very possible thing. I don't think that this is a statistic that's set in stone and can never change, and and that's actually something that I'd love to do, is a passport challenge. And so when this podcast goes live, I'll actually be just before my appearance at TEDx out in South Dakota, of all places, back to the Midwest. I'm actually originally from there, but living in Boulder, Colorado now. So I'll be speaking at TEDx, and in conjunction with that, running a passport challenge, just to get more people to get passports. I mean, that's the first step, right? You do have to use it, probably buy a plane ticket in the process. It happens. But that's the first step. So that's something that I'm personally invested in, and I'd really like to see sort of blow up. That would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the passport challenge is a very unique opportunity for you to actually kind of work towards, and I think it's such a noble and awesome effort, because, like, you know, I used to have this joke, and I still actually believe it, that if we got the entire kind of everyone in politics high on mushrooms, we would change the world. But I also believe that the exact same thing applies to if we got like everyone to like travel all the countries or travel to the countries that they had to go to war with. If they were going to go to war, you had to send them to the countries.
Have to go there first.
But for a while, not for like a day, not with the military, with just you're going to that country and you're going to live there and be there. I bet you they would not bomb that place. I bet you they would not vote for that.
I totally agree.
And so it's the same kind of concept. Like, what if we could get the whole world high? Maybe we would all have peace. Well, it's the same exact thing that applies to traveling. If you can connect the world by allowing people to see that humanity within each other, then that will change how we operate. That will change how we view each other. That will tear down these wrongful belief systems and walls and borders that we have between us, and it will allow us to step into the truly emerging connected world that we have, right? And it's not just because of the internet. It's not just because of faster planes and cheaper travel. It's also because of the fact that we're able to get to that location and see the humanity in these people and kind of really connect as human beings. And so I think the challenge and what you're working on is so huge. Like, it's such a huge...
It's pretty immense, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not like... It's like, you know, how do you go about doing that, right? Like, and so I think that the challenge is an interesting call to action, right? Like, you can make some nice videos and blogs and stuff, and then try to get people engaged.
I've got more ways. Yeah, we'll get into it.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the other thing that came to my mind is, like, for instance, when I'm trying to think of myself back in high school. Well, I mean, let's say I was 17, 18. I was planning on just going straight to college. I was thinking, you know, I definitely want to live in Europe. I had this goal since I was 14, and I was working towards that, so I was taking languages, definitely. I learned German, for example. But at the same time, I wasn't seriously considering the idea of, like, taking a gap year or doing something that, for instance, countries like Germany or even Canada, like, I hear you guys are actually it's pretty common for kids out of high school to take a gap year, or at least a chunk of time, and travel a bit around before they go to college, spend all that money on university.
Canadians are fairly avid travelers, I think, yeah.
That's what I hear. And I'm wondering, because, of course, like, we do have very similar cultures. So, like, what is it about the mindset that's different in Canada compared to in America? And how can we shift the general American mindset, especially for teenagers, to more of the Canadian default setting of, you know what, like, I'm 18, boom, this is my time to explore the world. I'm going to get myself out there. I'm going to learn about myself. I'm going to learn about the world. And I'm going to have a better idea of what I actually want to do if I choose to go to college, to university.
Yeah.
So I'm not wasting so much money, right? Like, that's the whole thing. Is obviously we pay a little bit more, a little bit more than you guys do,
of course,
to go to school. So
you just a little bit. Yeah.
Just a tad.
No, I actually I have an answer to that because I was thinking about it the other day. I was in Vegas for Catalyst Creative. It's a Catalyst Week. This great organization down there working in collaboration with something called the Downtown Project. You guys should check that out. Like them on Facebook, do all that stuff. That being said, I was talking to somebody about how the difference between Canada and America is one key major thing. And I would say that Canada and America were formed the exact same way. There was immigrants who came after the war or whatever it was. They kind of moved here for a better life. They wanted to, they heard that this was the land of promise. There was more jobs and opportunity. And the truth is there was. And so they left these kind of war-stricken areas and kind of got out of their current environment and came here. And they landed in generally two places, Montreal or New York City, and Boston and some other areas too. But they very much landed in those kind of areas and then kind of spread out across the country, both countries from there. Okay, obviously there's a larger history behind that, okay, from France and England and all this kind of stuff. But more recently, that's what happened. And the difference between the American family that I have, for example, who is in, like, let's say the Connecticut area, and my current family, or my family here in Montreal, is that my family here in Montreal still generally only speaks Italian. Everyone who they speak, like my grandmother's 91, she only speaks Italian. Her neighbor in the backyard is her brother, who only speaks Italian. Where she does her groceries is an Italian grocery store. Where she buys her bread, where she does everything, like she still grows her garden. She's in that mindset. Now, don't get me wrong. The grandmother in the U.S. is probably still growing the garden and all that kind of stuff too. The difference is that she has been a little bit more assimilated into the American culture and became an American. Whereas if I ask my grandma where she's from, she's not Canadian. Yeah, she's like, I'm Italian.
Yeah.
And so we in high schools and in our culture, we talk about each other as if like, oh, you're Portuguese or you're Greek or you're Italian or you're Chinese or you're Japanese or whatever.
So there's an international component already from the time that you're young.
Exactly. Basically. So we are a melting pot in a sense that everyone has congregated here in Montreal or in Toronto or all these places. Like we have every potential race and culture you could possibly think of. And so does America in certain areas, generally on the coast. But like I said, the difference is that our culture has stayed more intact. Like my grandmother is very Italian. Like when I see my grandmother and I go to her house, and when I went to Italy recently in November, they are closer alike than my grandmother is to a Canadian, even though she's been living here for like 50 some odd years, like 50 plus years. Okay, so she still does not speak English. Now that has nothing to do with, like, she understands it to some degree, but not really. Now, what that has to do is that doesn't make her ignorant. And I used to think this. I used to think, like, how could she live here and be so ignorant?
Grandma?
No, and be so ignorant, but and like not assimilate. And I used to think that, like, hey, like, wow, if I lived for somewhere for 50 years, I would learn the language. But they didn't value it in the same way that we do today, number one. They didn't have the same education that we do today. My grandma, I don't even think she finished high school or did anything remotely close to something like that. So number one, their ability to learn that was different. But the grouping, right? Like Montreal is divided in like, oh, that's the Portuguese area, that's the Jewish community, that's the Greek community. So they just huddled around. And I know this happened in New York, right? There's like the Little Italy area, blah, blah, blah. But it spread differently. It really did assimilate in a different way. And so why people travel more is because the actual people in Canada go back to their country. Or visit like other countries if they intermarried, right? Like, so if a Portuguese person married an Italian, like the Italian will go to Portugal.
To the family.
Yeah, the Italian will go to Portugal, and so now all of a sudden the kids that they have and the grandkids and blah 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 are more like we're more
accustomed to the idea of, oh, there's this other country out there I could go visit sometime.
Exactly, and even the other thing is, like, in a circle, right? Like, if I'm Italian, but like, no, Italy's the best. It's the greatest country in the world. And this other person is like, I'm Greek, and no, Greece is the best country in the world. Well, we'll both have like this little seed planted in our brain, saying like, man, I really want to see Greece. It does look pretty beautiful.
Right.
And I'll say
it's
that,
all
and then
in
maybe
good fun, you know.
Yeah, and then they'll be like, no, Italy sucks. But I'm kidding. But Italy is phenomenal, first of all. But I think that's a one little key difference that does actually happen, which is a little bit of the culture of Canada versus America is slightly different and is very interesting in that way.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that you bring that up because that's actually one of the original reasons why I personally started traveling is because like hardcore or like Scottish traditions, very hardcore.
So
It's like,
wait,
yeah, we,
can you just
yeah,
back that up just a second? You froze up just for a second. So one of the reasons you initially started
sure.
traveling was?
Yeah, one of the original reasons why I initially started traveling was because I still had family or have family in Europe. And so it's interesting that you closer connections. And so for me, my family, part of it came from Germany, part of it came from England, part of it came from Scotland, and they're all relatively recent immigrants. So we do have, you know, second cousins, third cousins, etc., who are still there. And cousins because they didn't speak good enough English, and I certainly didn't speak any German when I was 13. So it was a real indicator and like a wake up call that number one, yeah, there's a world out there. Number two, oh wow, I really love really nice to be able to talk to your family, no matter what language they speak. Which I'm sure if you have to talk to your grandmother, you probably bust out a little bit of Italian.
All the time, yeah, totally.
All
It
the
was
time.
it was technically actually even my first language. You froze up a little bit there.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
I'm back. Am I back?
I think you're back. Okay. You're coming in and out.
Okay.
It looks like you're back.
Got it. But the average American, like if we don't have family in Europe or in Africa, extra effort to connect and to get out of just that American lens because there's so much more and the world is absolutely incredible. And to only have this little slice, no matter how big our country is, like to only have this tiny little slice of all of the spectrum, all the colors of culture that's available to us, we're missing out on a fantastic resource and fantastic connections. Again, it's all about the people. Like epic people are everywhere. It's just literally a matter of you going out and meeting them. That's basically it.
Yeah. So let's boil down into specifics here. How can we, you know, I mentioned a little bit earlier, maybe write a list of 10 things down, places you want to go, that you want to visit, try and put them in a sequence or an order or something. Do you have any tips or tricks for travelers on how to pick where they should go? And then maybe sure. some tips and tricks on what would make them more comfortable getting there or going there, because there's a lot of people who want to travel with a friend, but you know, sometimes they get like thrown off, like their friend's like, no, let's just go camping like an hour away, or right. or the friend is like, I don't have money, or I don't want to come, or whatever. Right. So it's easier for them alone to be able to kind of like take the leap than to be able to kind of take the leap with the other person, right? Because sometimes the other person stops them from taking that leap too. So fear is definitely playing a factor in this, but I want to hear, what are some of your like more tangible tips and tricks that you would recommend to somebody who is considering traveling but doesn't know where to go or what they should be researching or doing? Yeah, obviously definitely. They can visit travelersmindset.us. But
shameless plug.
Yeah, but what are some of these tips and tricks that they would find on your website, for example?
Okay, so let's say you're a new traveler. You're a complete beginner. You've never been out of the country, or maybe you've never even been out of your state or, you know, your province in Canada, for example. Pick a destination that you've always been a little bit curious about already, but it's not so far out of your comfort zone as to be in your panic zone where you're just like, whoa, can't do that. For you, like China probably was in that like, oh gosh, I'm like actually afraid of China.
Well, see, this was the whole thing. I really actually wasn't. And then I was afraid a little bit. Like I was like, oh, I really want to test this environment. Nervous. Yeah, but I thought it was going to be like fairly easy because I had done like a month in Australia. Everything was so smooth and easy. It was all English, of course. And then I get off the plane in Beijing and I go to this taxi driver and I'm like, hey, can you bring me to Tiananmen Square? And he's like, what? Like, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, Tiananmen Square, like the center of the city, like right across the Forbidden City, like the place that everyone goes to as a white, you know, person like in China right now. Like, you know what I mean? Like that place. And he and the next taxi driver and the next taxi driver and like a group of them
No
had
idea.
no fucking idea what I was talking about. So I pulled out a map, and the map was still written in like,
characters?
Well, no, not in characters, but it was written in kind of English, right? So it was like the English translation of how you would say that word in Chinese.
Oh, I see.
So it was English letters, so they didn't understand it. They didn't know what I was pointing at on the map. And I was like, whoa, like, so I had to flip through. I had I think a hack is Lonely Planets, but I had a Lonely Planet, so I flipped through and I found a picture of Tiananmen Square, and I'm like this. And they're like, like all of a sudden it was like it clicked in their mind. And I was just like, wow, this is going to be really fucking hard.
Yeah.
For me to just explain Tiananmen Square, like I couldn't even believe it. And then to find where my hotel was, it was such, anyway, that's a whole other story.
Anyway,
I wanted to
bring
go
it back.
Yeah. Bring it back to the two.
For you, like that was definitely a comfort zone push, right? And like you had other experiences before that to build up to it. So I'm not suggesting that, anyone who's listening just like, boom, buys a ticket to like Chile or who knows, like Burma, for example. Like you don't have to go that far.
Yeah.
But like when you think about where you've always been curious about, and this is kind of going back to your why statement, like why am I traveling? Well, what's the purpose behind it? Is it just to like be a tourist and drink margaritas on a beach? Like that's one way to do it. But I would argue that that's not the most fulfilling way to do it. And I would challenge people to really go for those little things that pique your curiosity. And this is a key point in the traveler's mindset is get curious, start asking questions. Like if there's something you've always wanted to know or always wanted to see, then that's where you start. And that's exactly what you do. It's super simple, but like so many people don't actually take the action step to buy the ticket and actually go there. Here's the reason. They get overwhelmed with logistics. So what I would suggest in terms of like packing or, organizing like what you actually might need for a specific location, like please, please, please leverage the internet. There are so many travel bloggers out there. I've connected with so many of them over the years. They write these posts exactly for you. Yeah. They literally will run down like, this is the country you're going to. Oh, well, you need this and this and this and this. And don't forget, like, you'll want to be aware of this. So like people have done the work for you. You don't have to do it. It's awesome. Yeah. So
and their tips are pretty good. There's like some great YouTube videos and stuff that you can look at too. The internet is like the place to go and look. And yeah, I mean, even finding a friend who's done it or something. But
yeah, or like shoot me a message. Like go to the website. Seriously, contact me if I can get you out of your country or out of your comfort zone. Like I am more than happy to help. So just reach out. Seriously. So that's my first tip is to start with something that's like piqued your interest, your curiosity, and is a little tiny bit out of your comfort zone, but not yet in your panic zone. And the second thing is like, if you only speak English, if that's your only language, that's okay. Don't let that intimidate you. Bring your smile, bring your good energy. Maybe start with a country that is, known to have pretty good education or very good education so that its citizens do speak at least a beginner intermediate level of English. For instance, if you go to Western Europe for your first big trip abroad, that's a great place to start because you're basically guaranteed of being able to speak English wherever you go. I mean, yeah, you're going to have some exceptions, but those are going to be fun exceptions because remember, going back to the whole idea of just connecting however we can, well, gosh, let's say like you only spoke Italian. Well, this would be an interesting podcast, but I'd probably be using my hands like a lot more, right? Like,
so. This is why I'm constantly going like this, by the way.
Right. Jazz hands.
Yeah.
But like the other thing to do is, again, like with the language barrier thing, that's something that trips a lot of people up or keeps people afraid of going abroad. There are things called Lonely Planets, and they're awesome.
They're phenomenal.
Not even like the whole book. You don't even need the whole book, although it's helpful. If you just get the little language guide, they have these mini books. And for instance, when I went to Thailand the first time, I mean, did I speak Thai? No. Do I even know like the different tones in Thai? Because there are like different tones.
Yeah.
No, I didn't know any of that, but I picked up the book and I just like started looking at the very first page and well, what are the words that you use most often? It's like, hello. So you have to greet people often. You have to say thank you. That'd be really nice. And also, how much? Those are the three. Like, if you're going to start there, you're fine. Like, hello, thank you, how much? That's all you need. Because the rest you can point, right? You can point at anything. Anything you see, food, whatever, something that you're going to buy, a souvenir. a bus. How much is like super, super useful? All you have to do is point. So just learn like three little phrases. The rest of the language stuff will take care of itself. And the people, and this is the key, Mark, the people that you meet along the way, I'm sure you found that they're the ones who help you out the most because they see you as the traveler. They want you to have a good experience in whatever country it is or city it is that you're in. And they're going to be more open to helping you because they see a little bit of themselves in you. Again, it's going back to humanity. It's like, oh gosh, a person is lost. Oh no, person is cold, is hungry, is alone. I want to comfort them. Like, human beings are good at heart. And you know this the more you travel. You know this more deeply, more rooted in your core, the more you travel. Because everyone will help you. Well,
yeah,
okay,
and
not everyone,
they're curious
everyone
too.
will.
Yes. Many of them will. And they're curious about you, right? Like, they'll help you, but almost even like in a selfish way, I'd be like, where are you from? Like, what is your country like? Because they haven't been there either, potentially, or whatever. So they have so many questions, and you have such a great interaction. Plus, they know where the best and cheapest food is, like like the best nightclub to go out to, or the best like view to go, or like the way to like skip the lines or whatever. Like, they know because they're from there. And so like meeting locals is such a good thing. Like recently, when I went to Brazil, the first time I ever used Airbnb, because it didn't exist back like 3 years ago or 4 years ago, at least it wasn't popular. Nobody used it. And I actually used Airbnb and Couchsurfing actually in Argentina.
That's exactly what I was going to mention next, Couchsurfing.
Yeah, and it's like Couchsurfing. Okay, so to explain what Couchsurfing real quick, it's basically you write to somebody who's a Couchsurfing member. They signed up on this website, couchsurfing.org or .com. Yeah, org. Yeah. So I'm happy I remember that. You sign up, and then you write to where you're going, and there's a whole bunch of people with basically quote-unquote couches. They're not always couches. Sometimes there's spare rooms. Sometimes there's a mattress on the floor. Sometimes they're like just a area in a corner. Depends. Okay, and sometimes it is a couch.
But people will say that, like they'll write. They'll tell you,
yeah. They write a description of their couch or a living a space, and you write to them, and it's literally a free kind of exchange. You can give them money if you want to. But generally, a lot of this, you don't have to. If anything, you just treat them like it's really a courtesy thing, right? It's like, hey, come out with me. You're going to show me the best bar. Great, I'm going to pay your drinks, and then that's how it works. And like, it's super fun. I stayed with a couple an entire month, and I loved them while I was in Argentina. An entire month.
Oh my
they
God.
let me sleep on their kind of mattress on the floor for a month, and because I was building an Earthship, so I actually brought value to their life to some degree.
Yeah, you
too.
Probably taught them something new. You probably like learned Spanish from them, for instance.
I did, and they were speaking Spanish, but they also spoke really good English because they had traveled a shit ton too. And the guy was from France, and she was from Portugal, and so like, oh man, it was such an experience, and every night was, I became a local. Like everyone was like, when I was leaving, when I was leaving, they were like, "What do you mean you're leaving?" And I was like, I don't know. I have to go home. I have to go places. Like, I don't
They're like,
live
this
here.
is your home.
They're like,
this is your home.
I don't. How did that happen? They're like, you were here every day for a month. Like, how does that work, right?
Right. Just acceptance,
Exactly. And even Airbnb is another version of that. Like, you can get private rooms. You can get a shared room. You can get like all kinds of different scenarios. But generally, no matter what, you're always meeting the person who owns that place or is renting that place. So you're always. Local. Exactly, and they're a local. They live there, right? Or they have. I mean, they're at least there often, and so they tell you so many awesome places to go, or they add a little destination on your itinerary that you had never heard of, and that Lonely Planet.
Gold mines.
Exactly, amazing. And that Lonely Planet.
We have a guest. Hello.
Have a guest. I don't know who it is.
Maybe it's
Hey. Yeah, and so they put all of these kind of. They just instill all of this kind of awesomeness into your travels that you don't really fully like. I mean,
you don't even know it's there.
Exactly.
Like you don't really know what you don't know, and so if you just put yourself in the situation with a person who does know a lot about their area, then you're going to find out so much more, and you'll probably have some mind-blowing conversations in the meantime.
Every time.
Because I mean, you found it just as I have, especially with couch surfers. These people are fantastic human beings, and they're and again, like language doesn't even matter. You can have the most like uplifting, just like heart-wrenching in the best of ways conversation with someone you've just met, and that's real connection. That's deep connection, and that's really what we all want anyway, right?
I mean, I think so. At least I do. I can't
go.
speak for everyone, but I mean, for many of us, you know, why we travel, why we do what we do is we're looking for more. We're looking to kind of understand more. We're looking to create some kind of enriching experience, as you said. We're just looking for something, and you do, I mean, heck, do you find it when you're there, and heck, do you learn a lot about yourself and your own standards of things too. Like my standards of what I really needed materially in my life and what I needed to be happy completely changed. I mean, I grew up in beautiful town in suburbia of a very safe, beautiful. You know, I won the international lottery, if you will, and as to being born in Montreal and into my family, being, you know, just having everything I've ever wanted for my entire life,
safe and protected and cared for.
Exactly, and then having all these material items, and then bringing it all down to like, oh, I'm traveling for a couple of months and I'm putting it in a backpack. And this is really all I need to be happy or to survive and to do these things. And you realize that you could be just as happy, if not happier, with that. Yeah. And then slowly but surely you even start saying, oh, fuck, I overpacked. And like, and it
happens every time. It's so annoying.
every time. Other than that one time we were like, shit, I knew I should have brought that.
I know.
There's always that one thing. But anyway.
Right. You can normally buy those on site, though, so it's all good.
That's the whole point, is that I always tell, like, you could find anything you want elsewhere as well. That's like the beauty of our world, is that we have so much in common that kind of, it's not like deodorant isn't sold in Europe, too. It's not like they don't have tampons in China either. You know what I mean? Like, they have all of these things available to you if you need to find them at the end of the day.
True. And, I mean, with that, a short caveat, like, if you are choosing to go to a third world country or a developing country, for instance, like you mentioned, tampons, like if you're going to Africa, you might actually want to bring them with you. Yes. So do your research. Like, yes, it's important to be minimalistic because that's going to actually enhance your experience, but also know that depending on the level of development that's going on in the country you're visiting, you might have to, you know, prepare a little bit more in advance. So again, the beginner travelers might want to pop over to Western Europe. It's like super chill there. They have everything, so it's a good place to start.
Western Europe is a very easy place to start for sure, and there's a lot available to you. I mean, it's definitely catered towards a traveler in terms of trains, planes. There's so much that's out there, and hostels, obviously, are beautiful places.
We didn't even talk about hostels.
I mean, we could have a whole conversation about hostels. We can have a whole conversation about all of these different services out there, but the truth is that all of these are available online.
There.
Exactly. Yeah, they're available online to access. I mean, we have this connected world. Like, we now have Facebook, so chances are you have a friend who was from your hometown that moved to one of these places too, or whatever. Like, you can
or if not, go on Couchsurfing and search for the people in that city.
Exactly.
You don't have to stay with them either. You can just meet up for coffee or a drink.
That's the whole point. So, it's a network. It's a network, and you don't have to. You can use it to the extent that you want to use it.
Exactly.
And you just need to. You open your mind to all of those possibilities, and if you're again having trouble, by all means, go and hit up Ginger.
Please.
Visit these websites.
I'd be super excited to hear from you. Like, I love helping new travelers. It's actually something that gives me a lot of fulfillment. So it would be a win-win situation.
It is an interesting story. It is fun. Like,
it's very
fun. Recently, I know I have a friend who was leaving on her first backpacking trip with another friend, and she was like being kind of persuaded to potentially have like a rolling suitcase versus a backpack. And I was like, no. You're not going to want the rolling suitcase. Get the backpack. God. It will be more mobile. You'll have like a free hand. Like, trust me, like for what you're doing in Europe, like this is baby easy. Like, just go put on the backpack. You're going to be so much happier with it.
Totally.
And that's what she ended up doing, luckily. So I think me and others who were in the conversation convinced her. But that, like, I'm so excited to like be like, like this is gonna be so fun. You've never done this before, and like seeing their excitement before they leave and a little bit of their nervousness, knowing that
they're
the second they
nervous.
get back, they're like, that was so awesome. I can't wait to go next. Right?
You're just energized.
Well, there is something called the traveler's bug, right? And maybe we'll end on that kind of topic, which is that like we do. You know, there should be like a warning at the bottom of this podcast that says, if you do travel, you will want to travel again.
Yeah, it's an addiction. It's a legitimate addiction.
It is.
So
it is an addiction.
Yeah, be careful. But it's a healthy one because it actually helps you.
That is 100% true. It might deplete your bank account, but it enriches your life account.
Hell yeah. Love it. Love it. So that being said, stay in the traveler's mindset regardless of where you are.
Yes.
And like, I would be a very happy person, and so will you and everyone around you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I got to thank you so much for the wisdom, the knowledge drop that you have delivered on this podcast today. I got to let people know, again, travelersmindset.us. Travelers with one L. Exactly. We're going to make sure that the links are all in the description. Other than that, you're going to be seeing more of this.
Look for my TEDx talk. Exactly. I'm super excited. Yeah.
Oh, that is very awesome. That's true.
Totally.
When is that going on?
It's October 4th.
October 4th.
Yeah.
So around
have the links
a little bit after this podcast is coming out. I mean, you guys, I'm sure if you visit the website, you're going to have all the information. You'll stay up to date. Like her Facebook page. I'm sure she's going to have all of those things that you can follow and be a part of. The other thing is newsletter. They should totally sign up for your newsletter, because I know you're going to have one, because I know I've been banging that into your mind that you have to have one.
Mark is great. So great.
But yeah, that's probably a very good way of getting some value. I'm sure there's going to be a whole bunch of stuff. I think this is not the last of us having you on this podcast.
Oh, no.
So
just the beginning.
Yeah, thank you so much. Don't forget, guys, Green Seed newsletter, travelersmindset.us, and